So thanks for sticking around. Looks like we have a packed crowd. Good to see. We rearranged the agenda this year a little bit, so we made the podium discussion start a little bit sooner to make sure everyone still has enough energy. So I promise we'll try to keep this also interactive. Maybe if you've been here last year, we kept the slot where you could ask questions for the end, and I'll try to interrupt the discussion whenever we finish a topic, and then I'll walk around and give you the opportunity to ask questions. So I'll start with an introduction of our guests. From my right, the rightmost side, I'll start with Bernd Lang, who you maybe also know from last year's discussion panel. He is a member of the MSG Executive Board. Thanks for joining us once again, Bernd.
My pleasure.
Let's try that microphone again. Does it?
My pleasure.
I think it works.
Thanks for inviting me. Does it work? Okay.
Does it work? Okay. Then we have Helmut Königseder, a colleague of mine, a member of the technical guidance team from MSG Passau. Thanks for attending, Helmut.
Thanks for having me.
We have Adriana Gomir, head of Java development at Evozone, right?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah. This is a really cool thing that we managed to do, that we now start to also have involve other companies from Cluj. I myself am very excited about the discussion we will have and see what other companies are doing in Cluj. So thanks again for being here.
You're making it easier.
Okay. And last but not least, of course, Jorge Ratiu. I'm sure you know him. He's the one who has been enabling this conference. He's the head of the insurance department in MSG Romania. So Jorge, thanks for being here. I will start off with a topic we have talked quite a lot about today, meaning cloud platform, cloud as the platform to enable you to do innovation. We had quite a lot of talks on this today. And maybe Bernd, I will start with you. What is your feeling regarding the current adoption levels of cloud and regarding the customer expectations? For example, do you see particular use cases that customers tend to migrate to the cloud, or particular demands that they have from this?
I mean, cloud is a broad field. Maybe let's talk a little bit about software as a service and real native cloud applications. And as you know, I rather come from the business side, not from the technology side. It's a great opportunity for me to be here and really to understand all these projects you're working on and what kind of capabilities we get on the business side and what we can sell. But I believe there's a huge demand coming from the business side. And I would like to frame that around the platforms and the digital ecosystems. And I believe to support these kinds of business models, platforms, you require a different architecture and a different service integration. And I think cloud brings everything what is required there. And to give you a practical example, you know, MSG is doing 50% of our business in insurance. And I believe more and more our customers recognize there's a potential disruption coming into the insurance industry. And to give you one example, I had the pleasure to be a moderator at the ICA conference in Berlin some months ago. That's the world's largest actuary conference. And I had the pleasure to be on stage with Alexander Sixt from Sixt Rental Cars and with Frank Sommerfeld, who leads Allianz retail business, including the motor business. And if we talk about motor business and insurance, motor is the biggest portion of the portfolio of every insurance company usually. Yeah? So, the revenue stream from motor, the profits coming from motor insurance is very important for them. So in that panel discussion, we discussed about the future of mobility and how is mobility changing. From a business perspective, you can see there are mobility providers coming up like Sixt. His statement was quite bold. Yeah? So he said he would like to replace private car ownership with mobility services. So his vision is nobody has his own car. Everybody's just consuming mobility services. If you want to go skiing, you get the SUV. If you want to go to the supermarket, you get the large station wagon. If you want to go to the sea, you get a convertible. So depending on your mobility needs, he gives you the right vehicle. He also offers a driver or something ride-hailing like a Uber kind of service. And so he's basically offering you a complete service. In parallel, Frank Sommerfeld was talking about sensors in cars and the impact on claims and premium for insurance companies. And I learned that based on availability of sensors, the claims will dramatically be reduced over the next 10 to 12 years because there are no parking damages anymore because of the parking sensors, yeah, for instance, or lane assistance, so all kinds of security systems. And usually it takes 12 years to adopt all these sensors in the fleet. Germany has a very modern fleet, a little bit more modern than what we see in Cluj on the street. But so
True.
in 12 years from now, in Germany, we expect that we will have a reduction on claims by almost 40%. And that means premium will correlate to that. So this motor business will shrink for insurance companies. And then, of course, we have more and more fleet business. So if you look at this from an insurer's perspective, so there's a mobility platform that's cannibalizing the existing business. There is the sensors that reduce the overall motor insurance, and that's the biggest income stream. So what should an insurance company do? And now I come to your question. Sorry to give it a little bit headway. And now what the insurers have to do, I mean, if I want to work with a Sixt, and if his vision is true, that at one point in time you just subscribe to a mobility service, of course I don't need my own insurance anymore. I have my subscription with the platform, with the mobility platform, and somewhere there's insurance inside. Yeah? The insurance might be not on the vehicle anymore. The insurance might be on the service or it might be on the driver. So you come with your own insurance, and then based on your driving experience and based on your history, you get a specific price. So we need IoT all of a sudden. Yeah? We need IoT integration. We need something like IoT analyzer, what we've produced, to rate your driving. So it's completely different needs from a software perspective. And of course, the frequency and the volume will be much higher. So it's not I sell you one policy. I charge you every single ride that you're doing, yeah? And I charge you your individual price. And my personal belief in that area is that there will be a different architecture. And I look towards the native cloud architectures to support that. So if we want to make that business, then I need services. Sixt, maybe it doesn't need 10 different insurers. He needs one who plugs in his service and can make an individual pricing based on the mobility need. And that's, I think, this big disruption. And the mobility is, for me, the most tangible. I think you can translate that to all other lines of business. And that talks, for me, the business need that results in architectures underneath and in cloud, needs for cloud architectures to support that business. And if you're not doing that, then you stick to that shrinking business that will be cannibalized from fleet business and from the sensor reducing the claims, then I think you're in trouble. So these customers have to react. And now you can translate that to other lines of business, insurance, to other businesses as well. So I think everybody's in trouble if they don't adopt technology and if they don't go in a modern service-oriented cloud way. Yeah?
That's quite scary, actually, when you put it that way. Thinking that we might be providers of solutions in these particular industries, then how do you place yourself, or where do you see, for example, MSG? What kind of solutions does MSG provide in this context?
I mean, we are well prepared. I mean, I mentioned already IoT analyzer, for instance. Yeah, that's one element. Also, when it comes to user experience, I mean, these platforms like Mobility from Sixt, yeah, they live from a nice user experience. So in the moment where people don't adopt it, where they say, oh, that's a crappy process, so the whole customer journey doesn't work, people will not use it. Yeah? It must be easy, straightforward. So we need this competence. And then also how we come to these new models, how do we operate these platforms afterwards? These require different services. And I think we are prepared, I would say, with our Hybris competence. We saw the presentation from Rasko and Lazar before, the Hybris competence that we built, the SAP competence that we built with IRI, with Julia, Minosphere, with the innovation process where we can work jointly with our customers on that. So I feel comfortable, but of course that's not whole MSG, and it's part of MSG. But I believe in a few years from now, this business will grow steep, and of course people will transition some from the old world in this new world. So therefore, I think we did our homework, and we are prepared.
All right. Sounds convincing. Yeah, it convinced me.
Thanks for that.
So speaking of hybrids, Adrian, do you want to share some of your experiences that you have or had, or maybe also on a more general in terms of cloud as the enabler for innovation? What did you go through?
So until, let's say, 3 years ago, we barely had cloud installations. Now they are the norm. So we are kind of getting used to everyone going on cloud. The joke before was, when there was no cloud, is that we have to install everything to the keyhole of a system. You know, it's what they could afford to let you in terms of security to do your stuff. Now with the cloud, everything is standardized. So once you did it for a customer, it's something similar for the other. So I think there are lots of benefits, and I think cloud is now the reality. And we just have to go with it. It's as simple as that.
Yep, I absolutely agree. So Helmut, let's look at it also from a technical perspective. When you start building software as a service solutions, all of a sudden you have a lot more options. You can go with an approach where you build everything from the hardware level, do-it-yourself style, or maybe you can outsource infrastructure or outsource the platform. What do you think is the right way to approach this problem?
I think this question doesn't have the one answer that answers everything. Otherwise, AWS with its EC2 instances wouldn't exist any longer. I think when you go for a new project and implement something that's cloud native, then you have to look at your requirements and at the same time at the capabilities that you have in your team building the piece of software. If I'm in the situation that I have a team that's very capable of managing hardware and very operation affine, then I might go for the cheaper approach from a operation perspective and go for example, infrastructure as a service offerings and build my software around leveraging these IaaS capabilities. If I'm more from the application development part, I probably am better off using platform as a service capabilities so that I don't have to put so much effort into getting to know how to operate my software on the infrastructure, because from an application development perspective, that's not what we typically do. We typically don't deal with the configuration of operating systems and the middleware. And with platform as a service offerings, that brings up SAP Cloud Platform into play because it's a conference on SAP Technologies. I think we have the opportunity to build, for example, the side-by-side extensions on a basis that allows us to also operate this software, because it's not only about building it, it's a question about how do we run it and how efficiently can we do that from the cost perspective. And although I know that IaaS is cheaper, I think if you look at the real costs, calculating the time that people have to spend, that your engineers have to spend on operating a IaaS solution or a solution on an infrastructure as a service, then I think it leverages over time, or it levels over time, becomes less and less important. And it's, I think, a good thing to go for to be honest to yourself in a startup product and say, okay, I need more support because we're not as experienced in that field. We go for PaaS offering or even function as a service or whatever there is to achieve what you want to achieve.
I also agree it's often misleading that you tend to disregard the costs with the person handling the operations, and you when you draw the line, maybe actually having outsourced the entire platform from the start, it might have been even more profitable. Yeah. Maybe one more question with this regard is, or maybe cloud in general. Feel free to answer, any of you. I find it. How do you feel that customers react to these security concerns, are they still there? Are the customers still very protective of their own data and say we want to have the data residing in our data center? And if yes, what would you propose as a solution? How do you counter that?
They should always be concerned about their data and security and so on. I read actually yesterday an article from Bloomberg. Amazon discovered on their main boards a chip that was placed there by their supplier of main boards. And they traced back that chip to the suppliers of the suppliers of the suppliers back in China. So this is supply chain hacking. That's how they call it. So somewhere in China they put a chip on mainboards, and those got to Amazon, right? That chip was capable of interfering with the operating system loading. So it can place stuff inside the operating system, right? It was connected to the BIOS. And it also connected to an external service to ask for instructions, right? So
quite impressive.
Yeah, it's they say it's like seeing a unicorn jumping over the rainbow. This was very special as a finding. So everybody should be worried. And maybe this is one of the main drawbacks of the cloud. The others, I think we can overcome the others, but this one, I think it's the most serious one, and everybody should treat it fairly.
I have an addition to that. I mean, if it was really Amazon, I thought it was Apple, the Apple Cloud.
Apple did not confirm yet.
Okay.
But it seems that Apple is there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about companies being specialized on operating hardware at that level, and they missed that thing. So what do we think will the hardware in our own data centers look like, or in the customer's data center? Is this more secure? I've talked to an AWS architect about security, and he basically told me, if a customer asks me about security, I go there with the bold chest, because I say, how easy is it in your on-premise system to go to the basement and stick a USB stick inside the USB port of your servers? And how easy is that on AWS? You typically don't even find the locations because they're physically hidden, or they don't tell you where those are. So the security is on a high, from my point of view, on a much higher level. You of course have to build your applications right to not disrupt that security. But I think it would be not fair to say, okay, they got the issue and it's a cloud issue. I think it's a general issue with data security for the whole industry, wherever the data resides.
I tend to agree with you, Helmut. Yeah? And I also believe the Amazons and the Azures and the Google Clouds, and they have more power to secure the environment compared to our own capabilities. And if somebody finds that chip, then I believe it's not our guys. It might be somebody at Amazon where they have research labs for that. So I believe from a market adoption, I found it quite remarkable just recently, the headline that Deutsche Telekom, for instance, was closing down the German Azure cloud. So obviously, people were not willing to pay more to be sure that your data is stored in Germany. So data privacy topic. So everybody was concerned, oh, if I store my data at Azure, then it's somewhere in the US and I don't have access to that. So Telekom was somehow making an alternative offer that they guarantee it's in Germany, and obviously nobody picked it up. It was too expensive. But still, cloud subscriptions are growing, and there's more cloud business coming. So therefore, I believe if you look at the license sales now, also with SAP, how much cloud they sell, cloud subscription versus on-premise, there's a clear tendency that you can't stop anymore, and I think it will become a commodity more and more. And I also believe data is in good hands with these large players. And even if they make mistakes, I mean, they're very financially strong. I can make them liable also. And maybe there's more to get. If they have a data breach, they can't afford that. Yeah? Imagine the headline, if Amazon has a huge data breach, a security gap, it's a different headline than MSG has such a data security breach. Yeah? So therefore,
good
no
point.
worries.
So, any other questions on these topics? No? I'm curious, I mean, you always still find customers that are still not willing to do it, and then, Helmut, we know the situations where then either you would propose then some kind of hybrid landscape, or maybe even go to a private cloud. Is that something like a backup solution that you would go to, or what do you think about private clouds, for example?
Well, the private cloud is, from my point of view, a transition model. So the customers might not yet dare to go to the cloud because of security considerations. So they feel safer building up the hardware and maintaining it on their own premises because it's fit more from a feeling point of view, the better solution. But I guess in the long run, or probably in the next few years, we're going to see that the trust grows more and more in the public cloud providers, and with that, the private cloud probably decreases from adoption perspective. Because why should I, if I trust in my public cloud providers, build up the infrastructure at my own premises? This is expensive. The hardware outdates, I have to take care of all those stuff, and it costs a lot of money. I think it's simply not very efficient to go for the private cloud. And talking to one of our customers, he has a private cloud in place, but still he sees the necessity to leverage the power of the AWS in that specific case. So he has breakouts from his private cloud to the public cloud. And then again, hosting the data on his private cloud, leveraging compute capabilities or computing power in AWS. And this shows for me that this customer has accepted that he cannot build up the elasticity he needs for his future business demands on his own, because he would have to build up all the capacity he needs, also the maximum level, and would have to maintain that. While on the global or the public cloud, I just consume it when I need it, and I don't consume it if I don't need it. So private cloud for me will die at some point, except for very specific cases where you can't accept your data to live anywhere else.
I see a hand raised here.
Thanks. Do you think that GDPR would slow down the expansion of cloud in Europe?
So the same with the Cloud Act in America, I guess. I don't think so, that it will really, perhaps now it will give a dent, of course, because every time you add new regulations, people need the time to adopt the new regulations. But actually, I think there will be the point in time when we are used to that regulation and we simply adopt it, and it's not important any longer that this stuff resides in the cloud or that this regulation exists, because everyone is used to it.
And regulation, I think, is a market opportunity as well. Cloudifier from Allianz, for instance, they created a cloud offering that is BaFin conform, which is the German regulatory authority for the financial industries, the financial services industries. So they guarantee, if you run your application, that it's BaFin compliant, and that's a strong promise, because if you have to build it yourself, I mean, Amazon is not able to do that, Azure is not able to do it, Google is not able to do it. So that's a strong offering, a combination of a cloud offering with regulatory compliance, and all these regulatory requirements might end up in a new market opportunity, in an offering that somebody will fill the gap.
And GDPR will also concentrate a lot of power into the hands of the big players. Because if you own the customer data, then you can use it and only a few others have it. So if you have a customer and it's as your customer, well, you can really do very specific stuff, and you're not in competition with anybody. So it's also a moat around the castle. So it's hard to, it can help for the business, GDPR. It raises the price of your personal data. It's more expensive, but it's also more valuable. But the total market could be the same. Not sure if I'm clear.
Okay, I think we can close this one up and move a little bit on premise, let's say. We have been talking about extensions for S/4HANA and so on, but the reality is we still have on premise quite a lot SAP customers running the good old business suite. So Horia, for example, how do you view this? Do you view this as an opportunity for partners to do some business, to migrate maybe a business suite to S4? How would you tackle this?
Well, I like this topic because I think also here in the room there are a lot of colleagues
Just
yeah.
Can you turn up his volume a bit?
Yeah, or I can use this. It's fine. Yeah, so, well, I was saying that I like this topic because here in the room there are a lot of colleagues of us, of our participants that are, yeah, cloud is a new topic, is a hype today. Of course, as the colleagues here said, is the next thing. It will happen. I'm also sure that based on the subscription that we have right now for all the big companies, also the customers will move in this area. But R3 and S4 HANA are a big part of the project and business that we do. And yeah, S4 HANA is clearly, from my perspective, not a follower of SAP Business Suite, like an upgrade or data migration. Is a completely new product line, and the customers have to be prepared for that. And also the timing is different based on the digital transformation that they want to adapt. I think if I'm thinking of the local market, on the East European market, is a big potential in this area. There are a lot of SAP subscriptions, a lot of SAP Business Suite installations that will migrate at some point of the time towards S4. The thing is that we have to be prepared for that and to consult them. And whenever they are ready to migrate, they have to know it's a greenfield for them, and it's a completely new IT architecture for them. So I think this is very important for us to be prepared.
So maintenance for Business Suite is told to be run out, I think, 2025 or something like that. So there's...
That's what SAP says right now.
I doubt. I don't know if there still are two customers around there. So some of them will resist, and of course they will pay a higher maintenance fee, but somehow if you listen to people, they always believe 2025 will be the end of the Business Suite. I personally doubt, because I believe there will be remaining customers, but they will go immediately that path, and then they will accept to pay a little bit more. I think important from the Business Suite S4 changes is the combination of the topics that we've discussed today. I think it's not a good business case to just move from Business Suite to S4, and I think that's already a common understanding in the market. So there's no argument where you just replace a Business Suite and transition it to S4. I think it's the combination of digital, using digital cases in combination with a S4 simplification, and then there's a business case coming around that. And I think that's somehow the challenge for SAP currently. So I think there's a risk that you lose the one or other customer to competitors like Workday or Salesforce if you don't play that well, because they have strong offerings. And if you don't look at it holistically, that you say, okay, the digital, the fast IT, so to say, together with the classic IT, the S4 coming from the Business Suite, that's one whole business case, and that's supporting these platforms, the innovation, the ecosystems, all these new scenarios. Then I think that's a very strong business case. If you play it individually, just this S4 migrations, you're a Me Too provider. There are many there, and more have automatic migration procedures, but it's not a strong business case. Only the two things together make sense from my perspective.
In the cloud, there is also a new monetization model, right? I mean, you pay by subscription. So if you have an installation and that works for you and you don't have to do changes, there is no business case for you to switch from a model where you already paid for what you have and you pay, okay, also some annual stuff, to a model where you start paying every month. So you need to add something on top to convince them.
You could stay on-premise. I mean, yeah, you could be S4 in the public cloud. You could stay on-premise, but I agree, yeah. So there has to be something in addition to that to bring the customer to do the upgrade. He has to see the benefit. So maybe coming back on the local market, I think we can dive a little bit deeper into that. I see you're sharing the microphone, so you can, either one of you, I think, is a good candidate to, I would like for you to share some of your experiences that you've had working on the, let's say, on the Romanian market.
Okay.
We are between friends here, so if you can.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, probably if you look at the Romanian market, you could wonder yourself if there is a real opportunity here or not. I mean, it's easy for companies, software companies, to just go outside and look for customers and never look into Romania. And there are opportunities. It's true that in most cases we are like a colony. I mean, there is somewhere a metropolis owning some business, and then there is a local branch of that business, and the decision is made there. So, but there are situations when this is an advantage, and I will mention one of our customers, which is Auchan. Auchan is growing very fast in Eastern Europe in retail. In the western part of the continent, they are not growing that fast. But retail in Romania, it's growing, it's exploding, right? So they found an opportunity to experiment here. And yes, we are implementing an experiment here, so it's not, let's say, the true final business. But for us, it's an opportunity to try to do something also for the Romanian market. And I think in the future we will see more experiments like this, because the markets sometimes are very different, and we need to look around and find those specific special things that you can find in our market and try to deliver solutions for that, and then maybe extend it. But I think there are opportunities. We need to just look very, very careful.
I totally agree with Adrian, because as I was saying in the previous question, I think there are a lot of opportunities here in our region. As Ben said, not only migrating from R3 to S4 would be a business case for us now. The thing is that we have experience. We are like 10 years in the Cluj IT sector. I was on 15. Something like this, right? And I think we have the experience, we have the know-how, and IT, from my perspective, makes your life better. So it makes sense to invest also in the local communities, also to bring your knowledge in the local market, and to work together with the potential customers, even if they are not trusting you from the beginning, but they say, hey, yeah, it's too expensive, too complex for me. No, we can do small steps, and we also made it with some partners in Cluj until now. We also collaborated together with Amazon, with the local mayor here. So yeah, it helps us, and I think if we do something, I think it's a sentiment for us that we invest in our local, in our current life, so to say.
I also often wonder and think about it. It would be sad not to use all the knowledge we have and somehow improve the life of everyone by doing something, bringing some innovation, in particular to the public sector. But we'll take it one step at a time, right?
Yeah, I can use this. Yeah, and I was participating once, or I think 2 times, at some meetings in the cluster ITs that are organized here in Cluj, and I was very, very surprised to see the interest is there. Also, the potential is there, and there are marvelous ideas coming out from these meetings. Still yet to be implemented, but I think we already noticed in Cluj. I think we are transforming us. I mean, you can see in our city there are a lot of new things coming up, starting with local transportation, or with some apps that we use right now in order to make our life easier. Of course, they still have to be integrated, because we are right now building one app for each one service that we want to offer. But yeah, it's important for us to look also here around us.
Okay, thank you. Maybe this is a topic that might be of interest, where you are curious. If you want to add some questions, just go ahead and raise your hand. If not, we'll move on a little bit. Coming back to the...
Actually, I would like to tell you something, which is, it's a fun fact, but let's change a bit the topic. So we got a request from the City Hall to build a software platform through fax. I did not know we had a fax. and the secretary came with a piece of paper and they said, the City Hall sent us, what is it, is it a fine? No, they want us to build something for them. Oh, really? And what is that? It's the fax. We have a fax. So, yeah, sometimes it's like this. So they are lovely people, but they don't get the chance to... What you see in the local administration is just common people, Romanians, that did not touch too much IT. And we should try to understand that what we know and what we do would help those guys as well. And I think there are opportunities.
Yeah.
How do you feel them? Are they open to new ideas, the local administration? Because in my opinion, the things are moving quite slow, if you ask me. So
they feel the need to do this. I know maybe it's only politics. I mean, you know, a quarter of the inhabitants of Cluj are students. The IT population, it's growing every year. So they feel there are some voters here, right? So and they adjust that speech to those voters and try to capture them as well. So you can feel it's also politics, but this exposes you a few cracks, and you find the crack, you go in.
Okay. Thanks.
You raise the standard and try to do something. So you need to put your foot in the door, basically. Well, that's something sales always has to do, right? And you need to start by educating them. And this is something a bit unusual because they don't come to you due to the fact they are competing with somebody. They come to you only for the image, right? And they want something which is really cool and nice, but they have no idea how to reach that or even if that's feasible. Maybe some of you heard about Antonia, the public servant Antonia, right? So it made headlines. Antonia started with a joke.
That's a chatbot, right? In a way.
It will be a chatbot. That's the problem, that it's not. It will, probably, maybe. It started with a joke because the mayor asked the IT manager from the city hall who's sorting those requests. And the guy, I don't know why, he replied as a joke, Antonia is sorting them. He cannot explain why he came up with this name. But then the mayor caught that and then went public and announced, we will do the first public servant in Romania. It will be called Antonia. But it really started as a joke. And yeah, so somehow Antonia is very cool. So if you hear Antonia, and then you get excited, let's say.
I agree, it is.
Maybe one comment for the local perspective. I recently saw a graph that was showing where the internet giants are coming from. And it was a bubble diagram, and it was somehow mapped where they're coming from. And of course, Silicon Valley is pretty dominant on that. So the Netflix, the Salesforce, the Workdays, they all come from Silicon Valley. So there are many bubbles there. Amazon, Google's, of course, the little bit older generation as well. And then you see many giants coming from Asia. Alibaba's of the world, of this world, and so there were many giants coming from China, India, a bit, yeah. But there's not much in Europe on that graph, and that's a little bit scary, I have to say. And that's something I think where Europe has to move, and it goes all the way down to Cluj maybe as well, to play a role in that. So I think we have to come up in Europe with more significant digital players. And why do all these new digital giants have to come from Silicon Valley or from Asia? Airbnb, we could invent in Cluj, we can invent in London, in Munich as well. So I think we have to work on our innovation culture and how do we come to this new business model, entrepreneurship as well, innovation spirit. That's something what's needed, and there are great opportunities for locations like Cluj, where you have a very interesting concentration of IT skills. I mean, if I look at Adrian's company, if I look who's in the place, I mean, you have the ecosystem here where you can build something big and strong. But I think we have to be brave enough to think big. And I think we have to compete against Asia and against North America from a European perspective. Otherwise, we fall dramatically behind. I mean, you see it with Amazon. How much do you shop through Amazon? I understood that in Romania, you buy through Amazon Germany and deliver it to Romania. I mean, they cannibalize so much local business. And I think we have to come up with something smarter, and we have to come up with some local ideas as well. Yeah? There's a strong power in local, and it goes all the way to public offices as well. I mean, it's maybe a starting point as well, digitalizing public offices and then giving great service to your local community as a starting point. But I think we have to be quick with that, and that's not only Romania, Germany the same. Yeah? I think SAP, fortunately, was one of the bubbles that was at least visible on that map, but nothing else. We wondered, for instance, why is only SAP in Germany on that map? And we said, who is behind that? And then we somehow looked at ourselves and said, okay, MSG, we are already number 2 in Germany. Yeah? When we compare software vendors in Germany, we overtook already Software AG, we overtook already Datev, so we are number 2. And also MSG should play a bigger role in there. So we should make sure there's a second bubble next to the SAP bubble, there's an MSG bubble sooner or later. Yeah? And it's not only Germany, that's Europe. Yeah?
It's interesting that there is this basically different approach or different culture to innovation. But we have it as a dedicated topic, so I'll leave it to the end. Yeah, so coming back a little bit to the idea of migrating from Business Suite to S4, I think this has obviously had also an impact on the skill set that we expect from our colleagues in the IT industry. We also actually see it at the conference where this year the topics are of a greater variety than ever. I think we had basically 1 or 2 topics about ABAP. So what's your impression? How would you compare the skill set of an ABAP developer in 2000 to one in 2020, if I can call him ABAP developer anymore even?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a former ABAP developer in the year 2000, I can say that, well, I read a blog article a few days ago on SAP.com regarding 2 terms that I really like and I want to adapt in the near future. It's like, probably you know the topics regarding a native SAP developer and a non-native SAP developer. When you speak about a native SAP developer, we speak about ABAP. Of course, he's very specialized in ABAP. He knows SAP GUI or SAT and so on. When we speak about non-native SAP developer, there is everything that's outside the SAP ecosystem, like Java, JavaScript, HTML5, and so on. And from my perspective, also in our company, in our teams, the combination between a native and a non-native SAP developer is the success recipe. So if you think about right now, ABAP is very, very important. It's still in the DNA of SAP, and from my perspective, will still stay there. And if you think about what SAP can develop right now and can grab under his umbrella, is every single technology or a lot of technologies that we have. And I think it's very common right now to make a comparison between ABAP developer and a non-ABAP developer. Who's more interested or who's more valuable for the market? I think it's not that lucky, this comparison, because how can you compare a .NET with a Java developer, for example? Who's better? I don't know. It depends on the project. Java. Adrian, of course. So yeah, like I said, from my perspective, ABAP will stay and will be a big hype in SAP further. So.
I think it's perhaps not only about what the single developer, how he develops himself, what skills he adds on top of his skill set. I think it's also a question how we collaborate. And I think 2020, we hopefully get to more sophisticated collaboration models that allow us to, that allow each developer, each person to bring his own special powers, so to say, to the projects, so that the whole project benefits. And therefore, we need both the domain experts that probably come from the ABAP native world and the technology experts that might come just right now from the university when we take a new project in 2020. So I think it's really about collaboration that we should focus on.
SAP was a bit late to the cloud, but what SAP has is this huge portfolio of customers. And the doors are still open to discuss with those customers. Those customers will switch to the cloud, but they need people to do that. And those people won't simply appear, other people. So it's still the guys that already work with those customers. They still have the chance to go and work for those customers. It's a question of also of people, not just technology. It seems that the cloud conversation it's a technology conversation. It's also about people. SAP had to do some rapid cornering to catch up the others, but I think they will make sure that also the developers will catch up the bus, not just the customers.
It's interesting. I think this also has quite an impact on how our actual organization is structured. If I look at how MSG in Cluj looked like maybe 10 years ago versus how many UI5 developers we have in our teams, right? And it's quite interesting, the diversity. Yeah. Anyone wants to add anything to that? Yeah.
We speak right now just about the new profile of the developer. I would like to ask you how you consider that the next generation of the developers should also have functionality capabilities. They have to cover also from the knowledge perspective the specific of the area, for example, insurance or automotive, or this skill will be in the future no such important as right now. Because right now we are very limited in when we try to win the new project, because we don't cover this kind of specific area of, I mean the functionality area, and therefore what we win as work packages is just so small implementation or some new development. But as I mentioned, I think that we have to take also into consideration that the next generation of developers to try to assimilate also deep knowledge of in the functionality side. I don't know why I'm so emotional right now.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question, Simona. I think, I can start if you're okay. That since we started 10 years ago, we, from my perspective, we always said to our colleagues or to our future colleagues that business knowledge, I think that's what you meant, business knowledge is very important, and you have to combine it. And also here, I think in this round, we combine technical with business in order to show you that both sides are very important, and it doesn't work one without the other. Yeah, I know that from a lot of participants here that they say, hey, I'm a good technical, it should be enough because I can adapt in whatever project is needed. That could be true, but I think you can be more efficient, and you have to be more efficient every day, and you can be more efficient if you acquire also business knowledge with the time. So that's my...
Yeah, I'm very thankful for the question, because I strongly believe that business knowledge is key. So if I somehow retrospectively look at all our solutions and say what are the strongest solutions, so always the strongest solution where we had somebody with strong architecture skills, I would say, and strong business knowledge, and somebody who could even talk to a client and challenge him on the business side. Yeah, when I talk about standard software, like our FSRI solution, this is a strong solution because we have one architect who can go to the customer and challenge the customer on business. and have a debate with the customer. And he has to be brave enough to say no sometimes, and then say, I don't put that into my standard because that's a specific requirement. And I think that's true for, I would say already that the developers today should have this business knowledge. Certain things you can only solve if you have a solid business understanding. I just was on a steering committee on the dairy side this week, one of our favorite products, and with one of our customers, and we talked about the locking procedure. And if you tackle that from a technical perspective, you have no chance. You will mess it up. If you look at it from a business perspective and really understand when do you lock objects and when do you release the lock, these are always business questions. If you don't understand the business, you can't implement it from a technical perspective. And this mixture of both is essential from my perspective, especially when we get into standard software. When we make custom build, of course, then the client has a strong understanding and a strong need what he wants, and he's able to articulate that. When it comes to standard software, we have to play that role. We have to hold that together, and therefore, yeah, definitely. I mean, I want to motivate you to learn more in the domain and then build up these skills, combine it with strong architecture skills, and then we will have very powerful standard products that we can sell successfully in the market.
Yep. I would like to add that I think it's really important to have a broad understanding of both technology and the business side, of course. But at the same time, there's always the need for the experts, for the specific experts, for the architects, the lead developers. And I think from the other side, from the business perspective, it's the product owners, the guys who, from product development, stand behind the product. And you need the developers that can do both. You need the experts from the business side, you need the experts from the technical side. And I think it's not, it's quite hard to achieve everything at a very high level. So the experts are still needed and still necessary on both fields. Just wanted to add that.
Maybe just to add to your point, I think it's a big demand on the consulting side as well. If I remember my early days on the SAP consulting side, we always had consultants who were able to code a user exit, in parallel talk to the customer on the business side, do the table configuration, and write maybe a report ourselves. Today, if I look at the consultants, they may be able to make the table configuration and able to write down what the customer wants, and then they need a developer immediately. Yeah? So I think that's also part of the problem, that we need stronger horizontal skills, I would say, on the consulting side as well, instead of maybe isolated skills purely on configuration, purely on business requirement analysis. That would help us as well. And then, of course, I'm with you. Then for the technical, I mean, the consultant can only go so far. Yeah? In the moment where you really need deep technical analysis and then strong, solid software, then, of course, you need a developer and an architect, but then you have a different peer. Yeah? So these two guys together can solve it much differently than if the consultant doesn't understand the technique and the developer doesn't understand the business. So I think both have to come closer together.
Yep. This is the collaboration part where I think we have to, this is the future. We have to make that stronger, that the people actively work together and they see the benefit of doing so. Yes. Where it's not the case.
And also be prepared to learn. So both the consultant and the technical guy, they need to be prepared to learn on the spot a bit of each other's things. Because otherwise they cannot collaborate, and being agile is about dropping useless documentation. But okay, you drop the documentation, but then where is the knowledge? So the knowledge is in people, and there is a lot of emphasis on that. And if you want to be agile, you just need to learn the business domain. There's no other option.
I believe anyhow DevOps will force us into that model. But otherwise, I think you will fail individually, but also as a company.
Speaking of DevOps, no, I mean, you mentioned brand innovation, and I think it's obviously quite a different approach. I myself have experienced it as well, being used to these rigid waterfall approaches in some consulting projects, and then moving to this completely different mindset, basically. So my question would be, if we are talking about innovation, building some cool cloud-native applications, what do you think, leaving the technology part aside, what else do you think is necessary in an organization to enable innovation?
We just started this concept of the company builder, and I would like to explain that for a second. Innovation labs, we participate. Innovation labs, we run ourselves, like Cookhouse Lab or Insure Lab Germany. We participate, Minosphere in Passau. So I think we have already some infrastructure where we can collaborate with customers on open innovation, closed innovation, on future business models. But there was one lessons learned. We work a lot with an innovation agency in Munich, Hive. So they do innovation already since 15 years. Yeah? And they were already dealing with innovation when everybody said, okay, that's just a letterbox. And if somebody has an idea, he puts it into the letterbox. And then maybe 1 month later, somebody's opening it and throw it away. So they started in this time. And so they know the evolution of innovation, what works, what doesn't work. And of course, they operate innovation labs as well. And they did some innovation labs with banks. And so they came up with 3 very successful use cases. So they discussed these ideas in the innovation lab. They were all successfully approved at the end. So they said, okay, that's a real valid improvement to our business. And what happened next was that this customer, the bank, brought it back to this organization, asked the in-house IT build it. And the in-house IT of a bank, you can imagine, it's not the agile organization, that's the waterfall model and strong hierarchy and then order control all the way from top down. And they come up with an estimate because they didn't understand it. Yeah? And they said, oh, we need all of a sudden, we need designers, and we need artificial intelligence, we need machine learning, we might need IoT, we need blockchain. So all these new technologies are required to fulfill these business cases. And then, of course, they made an estimate, and I think it was a 3-digit million number that they came up with. And they brought it back to the management. Management said, okay, fine, was a good idea, but it's not doable, so it doesn't pay off. Then this company went to a company builder, in this case, a company from Berlin. I think it's, to mention it, it's FinLeap. Yeah? They're called FinTech Company Builder. And their business model is basically they pick up such outcome from innovation labs and they build it, turnkey. They build it for you. And they have all this experience. They are focused on the digital key technologies, so have all these experts. They can basically develop you the platform, give you the key to the platform, or operate the platform. And then the difference was 1 to 10 between what the internal IT was estimating compared to what the company builder was estimating, because they did it in an agile way. They did it with cloud microservice, continuous deployment, and DevOps principles. So all modern technology was used. And here you see the power of an agile technology. Of course, it's an unfair comparison, because I would say the worst case what you can think about is an in-house banking IT compared to a fintech company builder. That's the most extreme comparison I think you can make. But it talks about you need these capabilities, and I think you have to think in different organization models. I think, Helmut, you talked about that in your presentation today, what it needs to build up a cloud development team. And these capabilities are necessary to play a role in that business. And therefore, for us, we use Minosphere now as this company builder. So this is exactly what we want to tackle. So we want to dock into, connect to Cookhouse Lab or to Insure Lab Germany, and see, okay, once there are projects coming out that we would like to develop, then we would like to do that exactly with this fintech company builder approach with Minosphere. And I think that's the answer to the question, what is necessary and how powerful also a cloud development organization can be compared to a classical.
Okay, anything to add on that? Yep.
Thank you. So Bernard mentioned the IOTA analyzer, IoT analyzer in the beginning, and he also mentioned about helping community. Is this working at all? No.
We could use it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, and one idea fall on my mind. So maybe we could use IOTA to analyze public transport. And on that way, we could maybe collect data from public transport, assign score to it, and expose it public without data or some service. And by that way, we could open data. We could people could do machine learning, analyze that, and we could shape our solution more. So it would be a great for marketing and exposure. of IOT. I think that there are some interesting use cases we could do with IOTA.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, okay.
I totally agree with you. IOTA is key technology. When we look at platform business, the example what I mentioned at the beginning was mobility. You need something like IOTA in there, yeah? Because you have to track all the rides and you have to somehow rate it and then transfer it to the backend systems. And there are many, many use cases like that where you need a tool like IOTA, and IoT will be key to many of these examples. But the example what you just mentioned, I just learned some weeks ago that somebody is doing exactly what you mentioned. And
we have a score.
Huh?
We have a score today.
Yeah, we can check. Maybe that's a missing piece. I didn't check that with them, but this idea, public transportation, also route optimization, for instance, yeah, for public transportation, that they see, okay, what are peak hours, what does correlate with weather and with vacation and all that. So that was one of their business ideas.
Well, I think that would be fun to, for example, for community to do something like that.
So let's visit them and see if we can make a pitch.
Actually, I have a few insights of that. Some of the buses in Cluj have like 4 systems installed on them, which overlap as functionality. There's a computer, there's a GPS, some sort of a sensor, and they all send data to a different, let's say, cloud. So if you can imagine, some of the buses have 4 totally separated systems installed on them here in Cluj.
Public sector at its peak.
Yeah, and why they have this? Because the data is it's kept by each of the suppliers to do a very specific thing, and will not expose that data to the others. Mm-hmm. And I can name the systems. One is the ticketing system, the one where you validate your ticket, right? Then there is a system that tracks the buses and sends them to Google, such that on Google Maps you see the arrival times. There is a system that collects pollution data. So buses go around the city and they measure different air factors around the city. And there is another one, I forgot which one it is, but there is a 4th one. So the data, actually, the problem there is, touching the data with your own hands.
That's maybe also a business opportunity for the public transportation organization, because they could collect the data themselves and sell it instead of allowing them to install the devices in their buses, right?
Yeah, I wish they had that thinking. I mean, we could solve everything with money, the cheapest version of solving.
Yes.
I was sure that Adrian will come up with this example, because I was also present when we discussed it. Yeah? When we discussed these topics with the project manager, the main project manager from the city hall in Cluj, and he had also an idea, or he had a proposal for us that he has a lot of money. He said that I have a lot of money that are coming from the European funds, and they are in plan to renovate 2 or 3 big places in Cluj, like where the students' hall is, and they have the money. They can introduce sensors in the trees, for example, or in the benches and everything, and they don't know how to gather all this data and what to do with it. But they have the money for this project. So I think it's interesting. IOTA could be a solution to propose to our city hall that they use the data from these sensors.
From Serbia, it's similar with politics like in Romania, but it's a proposal. Something like that can be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like Adrian said, it's also politics here, because they know there's a lot of IT coming, happening here in Cluj, and they say, hey, why shouldn't we add sensors in the benches and in the trees? Because I'm sure the students and IT students will like it, but they don't know what to do with it. So I think we can help them. I mean, it's a good example.
And we need to look, from the need, not from the solution. There is a word that stays like this: that might be the solution, but what is the problem? So there is a group in Boston. They try to solve city issues by trying to put in contact different parties from the city at the same table to solve things. And one of their core principle is, no, we won't put that device anywhere. so there are all these ideas that we can put devices everywhere. Well, you need to really prove the necessity for that. Is it a tree cheaper to replant than to monitor the water? Maybe it is. So you replant the trees. Yeah, it sounds heartless, but it's in terms of value and cost. We need to be really sure that, yeah, we want to put devices everywhere and monitor everything. Maybe we just have a pile of trash buried inside the sidewalks, and when they fix the sidewalks, they will take the sensor with them.
Yeah, this is like the typical example, just like Ben mentioned, that you start from the technology and then you try to find a good use case where you can apply it. And like I think we had it in last year's discussion where we talked about approached blockchain from the same angle, and we said no, wait, let's not find a good use case for blockchain. Let's see that it actually exists. But we're not going to start talking about blockchain now. I think it's safe to say I myself had a good time, so I hope you did too. I want to thank everyone for attending this very interesting discussion, and you as well for attending a conference. And if I'm right, I think we're going to continue now with some networking upstairs.
I just want to add one more joke. This is the first panel conversation that I'm going to, and they don't mention Uber and Kodak.
Kodak.
Yeah, the Kodak moment, the Kodak collapse. You don't know it? Kodak collapsed, even though they invented the digital camera, right? And Uber is growing everywhere and doing all sorts of stuff. So it's the first panel conversation without Uber and Kodak. So I felt that I need to add it at the end.
Okay, good. Thank you.